Hi, today we're going to be talking about narrative. Narrative is the first paper that you're going to be writing, the first essay. So let's break that down a little bit and talk about what narrative is and what it's not. So first off, let's talk about what narrative is not. Narrative is not a short story. This is not a fictional event. It's not something you read about in a short story book or anything. It's something that really happened. It even though it is something that really happened, it's not a journal. It's not like a listing of things that happened. It's not a today I went to the store and I hung out with my friends and other things. It is not a listing of the food you ate, and it's not a blog. It's not just talking about the regular day-to-day life. Narrative is, though, a personal story. And that sounds a little bit different from saying it's just a story. So a personal story, something that is important to you, something that really means something to you, and make it a significant tale. So if you're not going to tell a personal story about your first time to the eye doctor, unless your first time to the eye doctor was something huge, like you got new glasses and you could see, or glasses for the first time and you could see for the first time ever, that would be a significant tale instead of just I went to the eye doctor, I had my eyes dilated, and then I left with a new prescription. So significant tale is what a narrative will be. And because it is a personal story, they are usually really easy to write, at least on the general scale, because one of the idioms concerning writing is write what you know. And if you know yourself and you're going to be telling a personal story, it's usually easy to write in that manner. And as I said, as a personal story, it's something that means something to you. There's going to be other people involved, but a uh, it's not about somebody else. And going back to what it is not, there's not going to be dialogue in it. There's not going to be scene changes and other things. It's going to be just your personal telling. So before you begin writing your narrative, you need to start with brainstorming. And what you need to do is think of something that is important, something that's life changing. And then when you're brainstorming, I suggest start out with some paper and write as many details as possible. Just go with a list. Doesn't matter. You can cross off stuff later, but you write as many details as possible. Or if a listing of details doesn't work, you can free write. That's where you take a sheet of paper and you just decide on a topic and you just start writing and you see what happens. You see what comes out of that. And make sure that it's something that is important and life changing that you're free writing about. But that can be the beginning of your story. You can also talk to yourself, and I don't mean like taking a recording and recording your voice and just speaking. I'm talking about talk to yourself on paper. One of my favorite authors, his name is David Morrell, and he's a fiction writer, but he starts writing his stories by talking to himself. So he starts by just saying, why is this story important to me? And he writes that down. Why is this story important to me? And then he hits enter. And his next line is an answer to that, because I want to tell the story. And then he hits enter. But why do you want to tell the story? Because the story involves something important. And he keeps going back and forth until the story is really, really tight. And sometimes as he's doing this, before he knows it, he has started writing the first 2 or 3 pages of his novels. Now, obviously, that's going to be a little different because you're writing a personal narrative, but you can do the same process. Another thing you can do is you can create a word cloud. And word clouds are just words that are connected to each other. So I did an internet search, and this is an image of a word cloud. I'm sorry, I had to click through this here. So this is what a word cloud looks like on the internet. But what you would do is start off with a word, and then you would draw connecting words to it if you're going to write a word cloud on your own. So these word clouds can be very helpful in getting the specific ideas of what you want to write about. So you've done all this stuff. What's next? Are you stuck? Where do you go? Do you need help? Let's move forward here. One of the main things that's going to sell your story, and by sell, I don't mean like put it into somebody's hand because they paid $50 to read it. What I mean is what's going to make it real, what is verisimilitude, which means it is really, it's there, it is important, it is tangible. So those are the details that are going to stick out. So you got, as you're doing your brainstorming, you find what sticks out, what's important. And as I said, be concrete, be specific whenever possible. You might see me write that on your papers. Be specific whenever possible. And that's using words like it or the. Give me some specifics. Instead of saying it, say my dog instead of a dog. You know, it gets particular. But don't go overboard with the details, because are you going to write about the whole bird, or are you going to write about the feather? And there's details that you can pick up from each one of these. Like there's all these different colors in the bird, in this peacock, but there's also a lot more colors and a lot more details right here. So which one is going to be your more interesting story that you're going to be telling? So then the question is what to write. So with this narrative, you can think of it as a memoir. So memoirs are very much like fiction, and they tell interesting stories. They give the details of the characters, the people that are in the story, and it invites the readers in. It's not just a story that seems like you're sitting on the edge watching a story happen. It's almost like it's happening to you as you as the reader is inviting the reader in. So things that you're going to think about is, what were you thinking while this event was happening? And if you're looking at it right now and it's an event, what would you change? For instance, if there was a night that you're writing about, a night you had a car accident, and maybe you were messing with your phone or messing with the radio that evening, and you hit a deer and you totaled your car. Maybe you want to write about that story. Maybe what would you change with that? Obviously, would you want to not text or not mess with your phone or mess with the radio while you were driving? Or maybe you still would because of the life-changing event that happened because of the accident. Maybe it redirected your life. So because you're thinking about that, you need to think about the impressions of what the writing brings about and the story. What impresses you about it? What can readers receive from reading it? You think about, how did you get here? How did everything from before bring you to right here? And think of a memoir as a historical account with personal knowledge. I don't know if you've seen any Civil War documentaries, but you probably have seen something similar to what I'm going to talk about here. So in the Civil War documentaries, they generally will talk about a battle. They won't talk about the whole war. Sometimes they'll talk about the war as a sweeping, overarching thing, but they'll talk about a specific event. And within this battle, they're going to bring in a personal knowledge. They're going to bring in a letter that was sent to somebody that was on the front lines, or sent from somebody that was on the front lines to their home. And this personal knowledge brings the story to the reader. It draws a connection to it, and it's the personal knowledge. And sometimes the histories that we have from the Civil War come from just these letters. We can draw a better picture based on the letters that we have from the soldiers and from the civilians at home. So you're writing about a specific event and not generally sweeping through time. So as I said, you write about a battle instead of the war. So a good writing process. A good writing process, you're going to want to begin with brainstorming. And as I said, preferably you want to start on paper. And the reason why you write on paper is sometimes it's easier if you are handwriting something. You can get your ideas down faster. You can feel free to make misspellings so you don't see the little green or little red squiggly line under your word text because you spelled the word wrong. And it gives you the ability to have a lot of space to draw a picture of what you are writing. And as you're writing, you got to figure out what you want to say. That's obvious to tantamount to making the choices of what you want to write about. And I suggest that after you have begun this process, you get specific quickly. So instead of writing about the week that you got your dog, so starting on Monday, how excited you were about buying your dog on Monday, then you write about Tuesday, Wednesday, and how it built up until Friday, the day you bought your dog, you get specific, start talking about Friday. Start in the middle of the story. Start where it's interesting. And to do that, I suggest that you outline. Outlining for essays is very important. So you can make sure that you are finding your thesis and your main points and you're staying on topic. Because as you're writing, if you meander about, the story is not going to really connect with your readers. And with a narrative, it's important to connect with your readers. So once you have done this outlining, and you've done your planning, then you start writing. I personally suggest you set a writing goal. You can say, I'm going to write 200 words, or I'm going to write a page or 2 pages, or I'm going to write for an hour. So set this writing goal and do that. Or what you can do is set your writing goal as, I'm going to write my first draft in one sitting. And the first draft, it can be 4 times as long as necessary because you're going to fix that as you are doing your rewriting. So the reason why I suggest that you write your first draft in one sitting is because I'm going to be reading it in one sitting. So you want the story to feel like it's being told and being finished. Now, if you don't have time to write it in one sitting, that's fine. This is just a general suggestion. So after you've done your first draft, you got to go to your next step, and that is revise. So you go through the paper and you just revise it. And then after you've done your revisions, you've written all your notes on it, then you're going to rewrite it. I'm not saying rewrite the whole page, the whole thing word for word, although some of the authors and writers that I know of, they will rewrite their whole manuscript every single time that they're rewriting. And every time they do that, they start from page 1 and they find something new, some new way to tell the story. So after you rewrite, then you reread. And you know what happens when you reread? You're going to find mistakes. So you're going to revise it again. And then you're going to rewrite. And then you're going to reread. And I could keep clicking through this because this process doesn't end. Most of the writing that you're going to be doing is really going to be rewriting. But don't be daunted with that. We'll talk about that later. So next, let's just talk about some general writing tips. So when you're writing, just keep the story moving. And by that, I mean cut out the boring parts. That is going back to what I was talking about, the week leading up to buying your dog. On Monday, I woke up, I was really excited. I'm going to buy a dog on Friday. So I went to school. And then after school, I went to work. And then after work, I met my friends. And we went to a restaurant. And I had spicy chicken wings. And they were really hot. And then I got home and I went to bed. That might be interesting to you. But as a reader, that's a boring part. So I suggest cut that stuff. Get down to the story specifically. I also suggest removing extra words. Now that kind of sounds like it's the same thing as remove the boring parts, but the extra words are are things like I thought to myself, or pick up, or not pick up, sit down, open up the door. These extra words are up and down, general directions, unless you're saying look up there and it is showing a direction of up, or sit down. People usually sit, they always sit down, they don't sit up, unless they are actually sitting up to for emphasis. But anyway, remove the extra words. And I'm not expecting you to know what all the extra words are. I will be pointing those out to you as I am reading through your work. Don't show off your vocabulary. What I mean is, don't use a $10 word when a penny word will work. There's no reason to break out the thesaurus when you're writing, because this is your voice. This is something that is personal to you. And if it's not personal to you, it's not words that you would use every day, then it doesn't belong in your writing. So don't show off your vocabulary. And write easy. That means just write it as it goes. Just relax as you're writing and just let it happen. And because writing is a process that's ongoing, so you're going to be rewriting often. And last, just enjoy the ride. As you're writing, enjoy the story you're telling, find the important parts, and just enjoy what you're writing.